Star Trek Discovery, Season 2, Episode 12, Through the Valley of Shadows. I know that some people say that Star Trek Discovery Season 2 is better in improvement over the first season. And the thing is, during the course of the season it had a 3-episode run, 3 in a row. The one where they were at Saru's home planet, then the next where Spock was introduced, and then the next where they were on Telesphone. It had that 3-episode run that it wasn't good, but at least the episodes justified their runtime. You could sit and watch the entire episodes instead of doing laundry on the side or something like that. The episodes were full of story. They didn't have filler material almost the entire run, and it's pretty obvious that since that 3-episode run they completely ran out of material. It's really like some progressive rock band that is not as talented as the big bands, and they want to write 8-minute epic songs, but they only have like 3 riffs, so they try to stretch it with their whole bag of tricks, like do this part with a guitar solo, do this part again with a keyboard solo, do this part again and repeat this, repeat that, so they get their 8 minutes even though they only have material for 3 minutes. And in television, that kind of thing ends up like something like the 3rd season, I think, of The Walking Dead, where they are in the prison and they have that story with the governor where, they obviously have material only for 6 episodes or so, but they want to stretch it out for an entire season. So every episode is like, they talk about something for 10 minutes, then there's a zombie, and then they talk about something for 15 minutes, and then somebody is shooting something, and they talk about it for 10 minutes. And nothing really happens. You just sit there waiting for anything to advance the story, but nothing really happens, because they don't have the material for anything to happen. And we just had that in Star Trek Discovery 2 weeks ago with the episode The Red Angel, where you would just wait for 40 minutes for anything to happen, and until then they were just talking about stuff, and nothing that was in any way relevant or important, just talking. In this episode, again, it's the first 35 minutes, they're just talking about stuff, and not even talking about stuff that advances the plot, but just talking about stuff. Like, they might as well talk about the weather. None of it is relevant, none of it is important, none of it is interesting. They're just trying to fill the time by talking about stuff. Pretty much the only thing that was in any way interesting during the entire time of nothing happening was there was a scene pretty much in the beginning where Captain Pike is asking for suggestions, and once again, like every episode, Michael Burnham talks over him, making it clear that she's the one in charge, she's the one giving the orders. He's just the captain, but she's Michael Burnham. And Captain Pike ignores her. And you sit there as someone who watched all of Star Trek Discovery to this point, and you ask yourself, what the hell just happened? Captain Pike, he doesn't even brush her off, he just flat out ignores her. And you're like, wow, Captain Pike, what happened? Like, that set of testicles that you keep misplacing, you found it. Amazing. When did that happen? Michael Burnham talks over him and wants to be the one giving the orders again, and he ignores her. It's incredible. I really didn't expect that to happen. It was completely out of nowhere, and it was really funny. That was really the best scene. And even though lately CBS has been trying to hit YouTubers critical of Discovery with copyright strikes, and they are doing all their campaigning against anyone criticizing the show, but that scene really felt like a Valentine to people who criticized the show, because it's one of the most criticized things that Michael Burnham always thinks she's the one giving the orders, and Captain Pike, he just ignores her. He doesn't even brush off, Michael Burnham gives orders to the captain and he ignores her. Like, I don't care. That was amazing. But besides that little Valentine, the feeling keeps increasing that Star Trek Discovery is actively designed for Star Trek fans, for fans of actual Star Trek to dislike. It tries to appeal to a new audience, like modern television for a modern audience, for fans of The Big Bang Theory, of Game of Thrones, of The Walking Dead. It tries to appeal to to modern television fans and tries to actively do not appeal to Star Trek fans. It doesn't try to strike a balance of sorts that both parts of the audience would like it, that it would appeal to both parts of the audience, to modern television fans and to Star Trek fans. It doesn't try to make that balance. It actively goes for modern television fans and actively tries to be something that Star Trek fans dislike. And the part of this episode that gave me that feeling again is when Captain Pike beams down to that Klingon monastery. He meets the keeper of the monastery, who is an adult version of Ash Tyler's baby. Yeah, that's how it is. And for a moment I was thinking, I think that could be an actor who appeared on Star Trek before, and I had to check on IMDb, and yeah, of course it isn't. And the thing is, in Star Trek Discovery they have these awkward moments of attempted fan service by awkward Easter eggs that make no sense and are really just stupid. And the easiest way of, if they wanted to do something like fan service and something that Star Trek fans would even like, why wouldn't they just get one of the regular Star Trek recurring actors? Like, why wouldn't they just get their phone book and call Jeffrey Combs, call Vaughn Armstrong, call Susie Plexon, call Tucker Smallwood, call Tony Todd? There are so many recurring actors in all of Star Trek that they could just call and, hey, do you want to appear for an episode? And they just don't, and that's the kind of fan service that fans would actually like, and not those awkward Easter eggs that nobody likes and that are just pointless and patronizing and stupid. Instead of doing those, pretending to do anything like fan service, do something that people would actually like. But no, they don't do that. They don't want to do things that people would actually like. The Easter eggs are just there for some justification to tell people, yeah, this is actually supposed to be Star Trek, but it doesn't really work because it's just stupid Easter eggs. They're patronizing and don't fit, and they're stupid. Instead of doing something that people would actually like. And there's that famous photo of a Star Trek convention where you have a table with actors giving their signature, their autograph. You have Jeffrey Combs and some of the cast of Star Trek Discovery, and there's a huge line wanting autographs from Jeffrey Combs, and nobody wants anything from the Star Trek Discovery people. And they're like, yeah, you want an autograph from Mary Wiseman? And the Trek fans are like, who? Who's that? Do I know her? Yeah. And it just doesn't work that way. Instead of bringing in someone that would really make people happy, they just don't. They go for those awkward Easter eggs instead, and it doesn't work. And it just doesn't work that way. And recently I saw a video, it's already over 2 years old, by Mr. Sci-Fi Mark Zicree, talking about who owns Star Trek. And he says, yeah, legally it's simple. If you want to do simple, legally the intellectual property belongs to CBS, and that's it. Legally it's owned by CBS. But if you want to go more philosophical about it, it's interesting. He talks about it that NBC wanted to cancel the original series after 2 seasons. We all know that. And then there was a letter and protest campaign by fans that made them cave in and renew it for a 3rd season. And of course we know, for various reasons, the 3rd season was a drop in quality. It wasn't as good as the first 2, but still, they made a 3rd season, and because they made a 3rd season due to pressure by the fans, they actually managed to reach the minimum amount of episodes for the show to be sold into syndication. If they just had 2 seasons, they could never have sold the original series to syndication. And when they did that, when they sold it to syndication, that's what actually made Star Trek big. That's what made it a cultural phenomenon, because then people started watching it, and then the show started making a profit. That's when Star Trek really came alive, and all due to a letter and protest campaign by fans, not by anything designed by the studio, not done by anything that NBC did, but by something the fans did. And also, Star Trek conventions, they are a huge recurring source of profit for the IP owners of Star Trek. But Star Trek conventions, again, were first organized by fans. They were not organized by any television studio. They were organized by fans, for fans. And this huge source of revenue that just keeps coming in after decades, again, that's something that only exists because of the work put in by Star Trek fans. So, legally, CBS owns the intellectual property of Star Trek, and if you want to get more philosophical, you could say that syndication only happened because of the fans. So the cultural phenomenon only happened because of the fans, and Star Trek conventions only happened because of the fans. So most of the long-term profit, the big billions that Star Trek got since the beginning, not since the beginning, but in its existence, all the big long-term profits that Star Trek makes is thanks to the work put in by Star Trek fans. And now CBS is making a show that they call Star Trek, that they actively design for Star Trek fans to dislike. And they don't try to strike a balance between appealing to modern TV audiences and appealing to Star Trek fans. They don't try to strike a balance. They just want to go for modern TV audiences. And in a way it's understandable, because Star Trek Enterprise tried to strike that balance, trying to pull in modern, at the time, TV audiences with weird modern stuff, and Rick Berman even wanted to go so far as to have NSYNC play live in the galley of Enterprise, which I'm so glad that that idea never happened, and everyone is glad about that. The title track of Star Trek Enterprise was bad enough. We don't need NSYNC on top of that. Seriously, what a horrible idea. And yeah, they try to strike that balance of half appealing to modern audiences and half appealing to Star Trek fans, and that led to Enterprise being neither here nor there, so that modern audiences and Star Trek fans, they would half like the show, because both of them only got half the attention in terms of appeal directed at them. So it's neither here nor there, and we all know how that ended for Star Trek Enterprise. It was cancelled like after 4 seasons, and the 4th season was shortened, and that's just how it is. But the thing is, if you want to compare, in its run, Star Trek Enterprise was cancelled, but in the long run, Star Trek Enterprise merchandise, action figures, comic books, uniforms, models, it's all still being sold. All the long-term profit that comes from fans buying merchandise, buying stuff, that is all still there. Because when you do something when you do Star Trek for Star Trek fans, you don't just have the profit from people viewing it, you have the long-term profit of all the merchandise, all the books, comic books, action figures, all that. And that's the thing. Because even if at the time they liked or disliked it, Star Trek fans today still care about Enterprise, because it was still Star Trek for Star Trek fans, at least halfway. It was, yeah, like I said, neither here nor there, so it was halfway for Star Trek fans. And in that way, Star Trek fans still care about it. And that's why it still makes the long-term profit. And the modern audiences that Enterprise tried to appeal to, they stopped caring halfway through the show. That's why the ratings dropped. All the modern audiences, they just dropped out, and I don't think many of them even remember ever having watched the show. So the halfway trying to appeal to modern audiences, it didn't bring anything profitable to it. They just stopped caring and now don't remember the show at all. Because that's how modern TV audiences are. They watch something and maybe they like it, maybe they don't, and then they watch the next thing and forget the previous thing they watched. And with Star Trek fans in comparison, it's you do a show now and 20 or 30 years later, people still watch the episodes for the 15th time and still collect the action figures from 30 years ago. So it's a really long-term income. Even if most people aren't Star Trek fans, it's a small group, but it's long-term. The income is long-term. And that's the thing with a lot of television and movie studios today. They always go for these get-rich-quick schemes, that they want to make lots and lots of profits really fast. And the next day, when people stop paying for it because they stop being interested, like modern audiences are, they have to go for a new thing to make lots of money really fast. Instead of doing a long-term investment that might not make as much money right away, but will still make money in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. They are going for these get-rich-quick schemes instead of, doing it the Warren Buffett way of you invest in something now and it might not make a profit this year, it might not make a profit in 5 years, and by the time 10 years passed, you notice, wow, I actually made $1 billion from that without any noticeable short-term profit, but long-term, it's profitable. Instead, they go for those, we want to make lots and lots and lots of money now, and when tomorrow comes, we'll just have to figure out something new to somehow get money, instead of making a long-term investment. And I don't know, I don't think it's wise, and I think the way they are doing Star Trek Discovery, it will fall in line with a long tradition of products like the Nintendo Virtual Boy or Crystal Pepsi or Windows 8, that you have a huge company with thousands of employees and nobody spoke up and said, wait, did we actually think this through? Because with Star Trek Discovery, if you actively try to not appeal to Star Trek fans, and just appeal to modern audiences who will forget your show the minute it's cancelled, they forgot your show even existed, then you're not making anything long-term from it. And that's just stupid, because they're blind to the potential they have on their hands with that intellectual property. They are blind to how much they can actually win from it. Instead, they make a show that, yeah, it gets people to CBS All Access right now, maybe not, but not selling any merchandise and not really selling comic books, and the DVDs you can basically get in a bargain bin with a free Rose Tico doll. Or it's not a wise investment to just go for really short-term profit instead of, if you have the potential to have a really good long-term income from something, why not go for it? It's not a smart move. And here, I digress a lot. I'm not talking about the episode a lot, because I talked about how, in the beginning, how very little happens in the episode that advances the plot, and the more I thought about it before making the review, I thought, actually nothing really advances the plot. This entire episode was a complete waste of time, because nothing of consequence, nothing of relevance really happened. There was a quick action scene that showed Control in a different body, and there was some stuff with Klingons, and there was some stuff with Section 31. None of it was relevant to the story in any way. The only thing is that it's finally openly implied that Michael Burnham is sending the red signals, but you could have tacked that on in a 20-second segment of the last episode. You don't need a 46-minute episode, including the trailer for the next two, to say nothing. It really said nothing, this whole episode. It did nothing. Nothing advanced the plot of the season at all. So you watch it and I want my time back. How pointless this episode was about nothing, and it was a complete waste of time. Because nothing at all advanced the plot of the season. And how sad is that they have so completely ran out of material that they make an episode that does nothing. They have a serialized format in which every episode is supposed to advance the story, but they didn't have enough material, so they did an episode about nothing. Wow. Like a Star Trek Seinfeld crossover. An episode about nothing. That's why I digressed so much talking about Star Trek fans and long-term investments, because this episode itself, it was complete filler. Nothing happened. There was a lot of talking about nothing, some action about nothing, and in the end you were no smarter than you were in the beginning, because nothing advanced the plot in any way. This episode was a complete waste of time.